All right. Good evening. Good evening. Happy Sunday night, everybody. Can y'all hear us?
How's everyone doing?
What's up?
Yeah. What's going on, Todd?
Lots. This is an exciting night, Eric. This is an exciting night.
Okay.
We've got a lot going on.
Okay.
Do you know what's going on?
No, tell me.
Oh,
I need to know.
well, first of all, two big announcements tonight. First big announcement, we are affiliate. We've officially made it. We have some emotes. My favorite emote right now is the no pickle, because we both hate pickles. Hate them. They're awful. They're the worst thing ever. So we have the no pickle emote, which is my favorite. And then a bunch of meats, because we all love the meats. So we're going to have meat emotes and all sorts of things. So that was big. That was big.
Well,
Congratulations on affiliate, Eric.
That's right. Thank you. Congratulations to you on affiliate.
Well, thank you. We worked very hard for it. Maybe a little bit.
Maybe. Yeah.
No, it's good. And yeah, I think there's a running deer that's psycho. It's got, it's kind of that, you guys know how I love the DJs. So we got the deer that runs with flickering colors and
Yes.
seasoning of meats, because we are sponsored by Texas Select Seasoning, of course.
That's right.
And everybody loves heart hands. Who doesn't love heart hands? So we have to have the heart hands. And of course, a catfish, because Chief is the catfish whisperer. Got to do that. So housekeeping, as we always do, we start off with the housekeeping. Kind of already broke the ice with the fact that we made affiliate. Don't forget to find us on YouTube, Cast and Camo TV. Subscribe, like, and comment. Appreciate it. Everything would be appreciated if you guys do that. We are brought to you by Texas Select Seasoning, Carolina Basco. Get 15% off your order from either one of those two using Cast and Camo as your discount code. And we're about to acknowledge and reveal our newest sponsor. How about that, Eric?
Hey,
you're excited about this one, right?
I am really excited.
I'm very excited about this one.
This sponsor is really true to my heart. I kind of lived and dreamed this place. So
and I did something a little extra special. Wanted to make this special. So let me switch scenes real quick. That's the wrong scene. That was Bob. So
hi, Bob.
There was Bob. We'll get to that. We'll get to Bob in a second. But first, the big drum roll. I don't have a drum roll, but we can pretend there's a drum roll. The big reveal of the newest sponsor of Cast and Camo.
There was your drum roll. That's all you're getting.
That's all we're getting there. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Look, what? That's something on the water. What? It's Sea Arc Boats. Sea Arc Boats is the newest and latest and greatest sponsor of Cast and Camo. I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be more excited about a sponsor. Not that I don't like our other sponsors. They're fantastic, and any sponsors in the future are going to be just as great. But for us, we're 13 weeks into this, Eric, and this is a big deal.
Yes.
This is a big deal for us. I would love to
enjoy this.
Yeah, I would love you to just say something real brief about how we know Sea Arc Boats and how we came about.
Well, back in 2001, I met 2001, 2002. I met Steve Henderson from Sea Arc Boats, who is now the president and CEO of there. He come on as a sponsor for the Brotherhood of Catfishermen, and they were a big part of our TV show. And I've been to many boating shows and fishing shows with Sea Arc Boats over the years, up until like 2008, 9. Went to a lot of different boat shows with them and fishing shows. They are tremendous. I've been to the factory 2 or 3 times. That it is someplace you would not believe. And we are going to actually go there. Me and Todd are going to go to the factory sometime January or February, hopefully. And we're going to do a film from their factory. and show you around the factory. We got Alex Nagy also. He is on board with us. He is their specials. What was his title again? I just lost.
It was very special. He's on the executive leadership team. He's a special project manager.
Project manager. Yeah,
that's right.
I'll get it out there. Sorry about that, Alex, if you're listening. So anyway, they are.
It's a big deal. He's a big shot. That's all you need to know.
Oh, he's like 3 inches taller than me, so he's really a big deal.
I think, didn't he tell us when we were talking to him, didn't he say that he was basically Steve's right-hand man? Like Steve couldn't do anything without Alex. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to put words in his mouth, Todd.
I have no problem putting words in anybody's mouth. I'll say it. It's fine.
No, that's good.
No, but for real, big thank you to Steve for giving us the opportunity and taking a chance on us. That's kind of at this stage, we're starting to build a little bit. We've been doing this 13 weeks, and we're lucky to have some people taking a chance on us. And I think this will be a big step for us with Sea-Ark and a great partnership going forward.
And plus, they're both going to be on our show, Alex
That's true.
and Steve, in the future.
That's true. I was going to get to that.
Okay, go ahead.
No,
so it's when Alex is coming.
Yeah, well, we'll get to there.
Okay.
You're so excited. I love it. It's so great.
Hey, I'm sorry.
It's great. Anywho, last week we talked black bears. It was just the two of us. But we talked black bears, and it was fun. I am excited. We're going to definitely try to do a Pennsylvania black bear hunt next year. I'm going to hold you to it.
Okay.
We have to do this because I have officially changed my mind. I'm okay with hunting something that can hunt me. So let's go and I want a bear rug. So let's make that happen. So that was last week. Our topic was black bear. Now we have what's coming up. What's coming up next week? Man, we've been waiting for next week for months.
Yes.
And I know, Bob, I know you're listening, and I'm excited for you to maybe check it out next week. We've got the one and only Jim Bortz, world famous outdoor artist. He's at, where is he at? The Steamboat something or other, Steamboat.
He was at
the art museum.
The art show.
Yeah.
In Wyoming.
He's got a few of his paintings being displayed there, and which is a huge deal. And Jim is a great dude, except he hates me for some reason. He likes to make fun of me for wanting to wear a glove to touch bullheads and catfish. I still don't see a problem with it, but he apparently does. But Jim's on with us next week. I am stoked. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And then the week after that is Christmas Eve. We're going to take the night off, and we're going to wish everybody a happy and Merry Christmas and happy holidays that night. We're going to take that night off because Eric/Chief Fox TV has his very special Christmas Eve stream in which a number of people are going to be singing like a choir. I will be busy. I'll be gone, so I'm not going to be able to participate. That's the story I'm going with, so I don't have to sing.
Joker's going to be very upset not having you in the background.
We'll see. Maybe if I'll have to have a couple of Kentucky bourbons, and then maybe we'll see what happens.
Okay.
But then after that, we have New Year's Eve. We are going to do a show on New Year's Eve. We're going to kind of just take a look at where we've been, what the past 13, 14, 15 weeks have been, and where we're going to go next year. Our previous and past, the ghost of Christmas past and future. And that'll be on New Year's Eve. Then January 7th, we have Alex Nagy from Sea-Ark Boats. Excited for that. And I have penciled in Wild Bill for the 14th of January. We've been trying to reconnect with Bill so we can get back into talking about seasoning and meats. I'm excited because I want to talk. There's so many things we got to talk to Wild Bill about. And Bob, again, I know you're listening and watching. So Wild Bill, Texas Select Seasoning. I know you cook a lot of wild game. You got to check out Texas Select Seasoning, Cast Camo, 15% off of your order. And he's award winning. His seasonings are great. I've mentioned Bob's name a few times. I actually snuck his camera in there for a little bit because I don't know how to work OBS apparently. So this week, our topic is pheasants and quail. And I'm excited because this is such an exciting night. We've got Sea Arc boats, we've got affiliate, we've got so much going on. And then we've got, I'm a fanboy. When I met with him on Tuesday, I said, "You're a celebrity." So I'm nervous. I'm all jittery and excited because he's a celebrity. He does all sorts of things. But I'm going to pull him in right now. And there he is, Mr. Bob St. Pierre. And for those of you that don't know Bob is the Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Communications Officer for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. And a lot of people, I've got to tell you, Bob, and I'm going to give you a chance to talk here in just a second, but when I brought up Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, a lot of people didn't know about it. So that was one of the reasons I was really excited to bring somebody like you in, is to give some exposure, because I think they're phenomenal organizations. So I'm going to give Bob a chance to introduce himself a little bit, and then we'll kind of dig into some things.
Thank you very much for having me on. This is my inaugural Twitch experience, so I'm taking it all in. Congratulations on the new sponsor.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you having me today.
You can, because I know you probably talked to these guys at the fan, KFAN.
Mm-hmm.
You can go in and tell Corey Cove and all those guys, Meat Sauce, and say, I was on Twitch, because they do their morning show every once in a while. They do their morning show on Twitch. So you can now tell those guys, I've been on Twitch too. How about that?
I've never met Corey Cove, believe it or not. 13 years at the fan, and we're ships passing in the night.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, the time that I spend at KFAN is about 5:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning till 8:01. So, I see Trent Tucker, NBA fame, Chicago Bulls, New York Knicks. I see him every Saturday morning, and Dave Sinekin, In the Zone hosts.
Yep, they're on right after you guys, right?
Right after us. Obviously, the program director, Chad Abbott. And on occasion, we have Thursday night show. So Guardsy and Dan Barrero, I see as they're heading out. But yeah, the rest of the morning show crew, I'm completely foreign to them. So yeah, but it's a wonderful experience being able to be a part of the KFAN radio family. Just, when you have different time slots, you just don't meet everybody.
Correct. Right. Makes sense. Well, you can still rub it in somebody's face at least and say, look, tell those jokers I was on Twitch.
I was on Twitch. There you go.
And we kicked ass, and we had higher viewer ratings than they did. Imagine that. All right. So give us a little bit of a background. First, let's start with the basic, because there might be some people out here that don't, when I say pheasants and quail, they're like, what's that?
Right.
So let's start at the very basic bottom. Pheasants and quails, what are we talking about?
All right, we're talking about upland game birds. So birds that live in the grasslands of the United States. And I'm not talking about lawns. I'm not talking about grass where you get the mower. I'm talking about prairies, savannas, tall grass prairie, short grass prairie, wild areas across the country. So you think about the United States and you draw a line across the middle part of the country, middle Illinois, middle Missouri, Nebraska, Kansas, everything north, all the way up to southern Canada is the pheasant range of the United States. Everything south and to the west is the quail range.
Okay.
So pheasants, great big gaudy birds imported from China in the 1880s by Owen Denny, a U.S. ambassador to China, brought them over, and the United States looked a little different in 1881 when they were brought over, and they flourished across the grasslands of the country. They were first brought into Oregon, and from there they kind of expanded to the east, and today South Dakota would be considered the pheasant capital of the country. Outside of visiting Mount Rushmore, South Dakota's economy is built on agriculture, tourism, and pheasant hunting.
And pheasants, yeah. And what's kind of funny about that is there. I think, and I was listening to one of your shows from earlier this fall, And you were talking about South Dakota, and you were hunting somewhere, pheasant hunting in South Dakota somewhere, and there was a sign, and they had pheasant capital of the world. I don't know how many signs I've seen that said, this town, we're the pheasant capital of the world. And it's both North Dakota and South Dakota. And it seems like there's this battle that kind of goes on between North and South Dakota of who really is the pheasant capital of the world.
There's a little bit of a battle, but South Dakota, just if you go by total harvest, South Dakota is earned that distinction. And there is a town in South Dakota, Redfield, that has actually gone through the effort to trademark it. And Redfield,
Is
South
that
Dakota,
right?
is the only town in the country that can actually legally claim that they're the pheasant capital of the world. They've trademarked.
Wow.
Interesting.
So pheasants
Interesting.
live northern half of the U.S. and quail live in the southern and the western, but there's 6 different species of native quail species in the country. Bobwhite quail being the most geographically broad. They live in the southeast, over by where Eric lives. Bobwhite quail are native to Kentucky and Georgia and South Carolina and across the Great Plains, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma. But then as you move into western Kansas, you get in the scaled quail. Into New Mexico and Arizona, you can also get into Montezuma quail, Gambel's quail in the desert, valley quail in California and the Pacific Northwest, well, Idaho and Washington, and then in the far Pacific Northwest, mountain quail. So a lot of different species of quail, but they're upland birds that people love to chase around the grasslands with their dogs, and that's
Eric. Have you done any quail hunting or even pheasant hunting?
Used to do a lot of quail hunting. Here we had, when I first moved here, the quail population was diminishing. And I think a lot of it had to do with the farming. The farming does a lot of problems with the quail in that they take more and more fence lines out. If you know anything about quail, they love these old fence rows. They hang on them. That's where, when I was a state conservation officer in Pennsylvania, we had quail. That's where they love to hang out at. Here, they seem to be getting rid of all the old fence lines and the good grass for the quail to live in. The last time I seen quail was 6 months ago down on our farm, and there was 5. And they ran across the road in front of me. And I actually stopped and took pictures of them because I hadn't seen them in like 3 years. So the pheasants, we have no pheasants here whatsoever. I have not heard a ringneck pheasant here since I've lived here. Now, I used to go to Iowa pheasant hunting. Used to really enjoy it. And I had a lot of fun in Iowa, and we killed a lot of ringnecks out in Iowa. But we had them in Pennsylvania, but they were put and take. They could not make the winter. So whatever we stocked as the state, they were either taken or eaten by the coyotes. So there was many a times we would stock pheasant 2 weeks before pheasant season, and we'd walk the field 2 days later, and you'd have feathers everywhere from the coyotes, just tearing them apart.
Damn coyotes. We just can't get away from these coyotes talking about coyotes almost every week.
Yeah.
Crazy. But I mean, with what Eric is saying, Bob, the kind of proves a point as to why Pheasants Forever came about and Quail Forever came about. I think it was 1982 when Pheasants Forever started, and it was really, the history of it is to take care of the habitat that these birds are living in.
Yeah, you're right on. Kind of the critical point for all of these birds is a loss of habitat across the country. And Pheasants Forever was created in 1982. It was kind of, the catalyst was a newspaper article by Dennis Anderson, who is now the outdoors editor at the Minneapolis Star Tribune. He used to be the outdoors editor of the Pioneer Press. He wrote an article calling for a need of a nonprofit conservation organization to protect the habitat, much like Ducks Unlimited which is sort of the New York Yankees of the conservation world.
Right.
And they've been around the longest. They sort of created the structure. And when people read Dennis Anderson's article, they were really moved to the point where unsolicited people were sending Dennis letters in the mail with checks
Is that right?
to contribute to the creation of what now became Pheasants Forever.
Right.
So Dennis and a group of folks started Pheasants Forever in 1982, completely focused on protecting and conserving prairie habitat, grassland habitat for pheasants. Quail Forever started 2010. I'm sorry, 2000. Yeah,
better say it right.
Yeah, you double checked my work. 2005.
That's right.
It was August 10th, 2005. For the same purpose, protecting, creating habitat. And so pheasants really, where Eric lives in Kentucky, that's not really part of their range. It's not, the climate isn't right. The habitat isn't right. It is more the northern parts of the country from Iowa up. There was a time when Iowa was the second highest population of pheasants, but
is that right?
Yeah, it used to be South Dakota 1, Iowa 2, and then Kansas, North Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, all kind of in that mix. But Iowa, to Eric's point, that the agricultural practices have changed pretty dramatically over the last 30 years. And the loss of fence rows and ditches and, the changing complexion of CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program, bird numbers have ebbed and flowed, where now Minnesota, through a couple of different tools like the Legacy Amendment, waterfowl production areas, walk-in areas, is now risen to be about the third highest population of birds. So things change as the landscape changes, but the name of the game is habitat. And you bring up coyotes, just sort of an interesting topic. A lot of people look at coyotes as public enemy number one. So, it truly is habitat is public enemy number one. But there's all these sorts of focuses on coyotes as eating pheasants and quail. But the reality is, if you're just looking at predators, the number one predator for the upland game birds that I care about are nest raiders or egg eaters.
Raccoons.
So, raccoons, skunks, weasels. And that makes sense when you think about it, because when they take out a nest of eggs, they're eliminating 11 to 13 out of a population as opposed to one. Just taking this one step further, because I think it's important to just back into the science and look at some of this. Like, a fox is a much more efficient predator of feathered birds, so quail or pheasants. So much so, and then fox and coyotes don't get along.
Right. No, they eat them.
So here's a really interesting, because this will dispel some myths that people don't always agree with, but it's scientifically fed. Like, if there's a coyote in an area, a fox will leave, and that could actually be good for pheasants, because the coyote will eat raccoons, push fox out, and a coyote's going to certainly eat a pheasant, but they actually territorially keep out some of the more effective bird predators out of an area. So it's funny, like there's some of our Pheasants Forever chapters have coyote contests, where they want to get as many coyotes off the landscape as possible, and they're actually doing negative impact to what they're hoping to do, because it can be a little bit incongruent with their expectations.
Bob, they might be helping the deer population at least.
Let me ask you a question, Bob. So here's my thing. In Pennsylvania, north of Interstate 80, we did not have pheasants that could raise themselves. So you got to understand, we stocked them. Your coyotes are out there. they're going to eat them, and so's the fox. But we found, as it goes, the coyotes, like the number one prey, is the gray fox. I mean, it'll kill a gray fox real quick. It'll chase the red foxes completely out. Like here, I think I've only seen 2 fox in the last 5 years, but I see coyotes everywhere.
Sure.
So the pheasants, like Beaver County, Union County, and that in the Pennsylvania area, Allegheny County, they actually, some of them do raise themselves, nest and have eggs and will have babies. Like most of the places, they don't do that. But you guys got true wild birds in Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, them places where we did not have that. We was putting them in, and they were vulnerable. Hell, the birds didn't know what to do the first 2 nights. And every predator in the world was like running in on them and eating them.
Yeah.
It's a free meal.
Yeah. So you've touched on a couple of things there, right? In Pennsylvania, the biggest key for Pennsylvania is lack of habitat.
Right. Exactly.
And then the other thing, I've talked about pheasants first being brought here from China, and people always bring this up, like, well, pheasants aren't native here. Why don't we stock birds? Why doesn't that work? Well, the landscape looked a heck of a lot different in 1881 than it does today. And so there was a ton of habitat for those birds to escape and to create generations of wild birds. Today, the science says that if you release birds, and again, birds that are raised under a net and don't understand predation, right? They've never seen a hawk to be scared of a hawk. It's 98% of released pheasants will die in the first week from predation.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They just don't know how to survive because they've never been chased around. So it comes back to the mission of our organization, which is creating wildlife habitat. And the other thing to think about there is, we're very focused on creating wildlife habitat, upland habitat, grassland habitat for pheasants and quail. But when you do that, it benefits monarch butterflies, honeybees, wild turkeys, white-tailed deer, nesting habitat for ducks. It protects water quality. It protects soil health. It creates public access for all sorts of people to utilize it. So we're very focused. Like we talk about, our motivation is bird hunting, but our mission is wildlife habitat, and that has so many benefits.
Right. Yep. So how many chapters are there total for Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, combined, separate?
Yeah, rough numbers, about 600 Pheasants Forever chapters, 150 or so Quail Forever chapters.
Okay.
So Pheasants Forever, being around since 1982, is significantly larger. We got about 120,000 Pheasants Forever members to about 20,000 Quail Forever members. And it's also reflective of how many people buy licenses to hunt those birds. Pheasant numbers, when it's funny, when bird numbers are good, more people buy licenses. So rough numbers, 1.2 million people hunt pheasants in the United States and 400,000 hunt quail in the United States. So
wow, that's crazy.
All right. So can I ask you one question? Is how do you guys raise your money for your programs?
So a lot of different ways. And that's part of the key of being successful, just like any business, is diversified revenue streams. Historically, the biggest bucket of revenue is through membership. Two different ways. You either go to a chapter banquet, so Quail Forever chapter banquet in Lexington, Kentucky, or a Pheasants Forever banquet in Stillwater, Minnesota, and raise money. So everybody that attends that banquet becomes a member, and $35 gets sent to the organization to fulfill a magazine and a vehicle decal and keep the lights on and pay for paper and X, Y, and Z. and then the chapters retain the dollars locally to do habitat work. The other way, if a person doesn't go to the banquet, the other way to become a member is what we would term unaffiliated. So affiliated, they're connected to a chapter. Unaffiliated, they answer a direct mail piece or become a member online. So membership is a huge revenue stream for us, but it also makes us relevant. So, we can bring a voice in Washington, D.C. to lobby for the Farm Bill, or in St. Paul, Minnesota to lobby for conservation policy at the state capitol. Other revenue streams is just like you all, with sponsors. We sell eyeballs as the largest collection of upland bird hunters in the country. So Purina Pro Plan is the official dog food of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, and they buy advertising through us in our journals, on our podcast, on our website at National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, which is another revenue stream. It's kind of the Super Bowl of bird hunters. We hold. I don't know if I'll get fined for using the word Super Bowl on Twitch.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine.
But so National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, a trade show and large banquet. That's a huge fundraiser for us. So corporate partners are a big revenue source, and then government grants. We have the second most biologists of any entity in the country, next to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and a lot of those biologists are paid for through grants through the U.S. Department of Agriculture or Arkansas Wildlife or South Dakota Game Fish and Parks, where we hire a biologist and then they work with private landowners to do habitat work on private property. So we get a lot of funding through state or federal agencies as well. And then, philanthropic gifts of land or donations in people's wills. Historically, we've bought more than 200,000 acres of land, which are now wildlife management areas or waterfowl production areas. When we buy land, we turn it over to a government entity and it becomes public access. So, long-winded answer. We raise funds in a lot of different ways.
Well, and I mean, you can't go to any store, at least in Minnesota, I'm sure in other, especially North Dakota and South Dakota, because of the affiliation that you guys have with Shields. You can't buy any type of bird hunting or anything without the Pheasants Forever logo on that piece of clothing. And I was going to wear my Pheasants Forever pants tonight because I do have gone pheasant hunting before, and I have a pair of my pheasant hunting pants. But apparently it's been a few years since I put them on, and they may not have been able to close.
Well, if you buy a pair of pants, yes, that'll generate a donation from Shields to us. And depending on what brand of pants you buy, that also might generate a donation, because Shields is our official store. So, if you go on our website, pheasantsforever.org, there's a tab there to click and you can check out all the gear from Shields.
That's great. It's fantastic. And just so you know, we did put a link. I have a couple what we call commands on Twitch and put some links. We have the pheasantsforever.org, the quailforever.org. I have a link to I believe your podcast, which we'll hopefully have a chance to get to. There's a couple of links. I put some links out there to kind of promote your stuff.
Well, thank you. And part of it is really fun collaborations, as you mentioned. Shields,
right.
Ammunition, federal ammunition, but also the band Trampled by Turtles. If you go to pheasantsforever.org/trampled, you'll see that we're partnered with Trampled by Turtles, the Americana folk rock band.
They're great. I love them.
They're terrific supporters of the organization. We're running a membership collab with them right now. That's a T-shirt featuring a pheasant, a quail, two species of quail, and a snowy owl, which is the Trampled icon. And we're going to hold our first ever concert for conservation coming up.
Nice.
On February 29th with Trampled as the featured artist. So We've done partnerships with the Minnesota Wild, the Detroit Tigers, the Minnesota Twins, Chicago Cubs. So we try to, broaden our audience through a variety of ways that we possibly can.
Yeah, you're doing fantastic. As I saw the shirt, I thought it said "Trampled by Pheasants," and I'm like, I need to buy that shirt. That's a great shirt. It's nice that Hooters got there.
A question: what do you guys when you have these banquets? I guess it's like the National Wild Turkey Federation banquets. Is that basically about the same thing? Okay.
Yep.
When you have them, do you have them usually after hunting season, December, January, February? Is that the normal time that you have these?
Yeah, good question. The majority of the country holds their banquets in February, March, and April. So, but the states that are really heavy hunting destination states, so South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, they hold the majority of their banquets in October to take advantage of all the influx of people traveling to those states as non-resident hunters. So, in South Dakota, almost every single banquet in the state of South Dakota occurs in October. Almost every banquet in the state of Minnesota occurs in February, March, and April. So it kind of depends. So depending on where you live, you could look up pheasantsforeverevents.org, and that'll give you a calendar of banquets across the country.
Okay.
One of the questions that kind of we're on the topic of finances, and one of the things I'm curious about, well, actually there's multiples. I've got multiple things jotted down here. If I pay my $35, is that to both or is that to just one?
Just one. They're two separate entities. You get different publication, the Pheasants Forever Journal or the Quail Forever Journal. We have different editors, different content in each, different sticker, logo, the whole thing. And that's based on the geographic differences in the so really, I talked about middle part of the country, everything north pheasants, everything. So there is a middle America that I term the mixed bag states, where, Nebraska, Kansas, you go hunting in those states and you have no idea what's going to flush, if it's going to be a pheasant, a covey of quail, a prairie chicken. But for the most part, people identify as either a pheasant hunter or a quail hunter.
Okay. And I'm going to actually switch to a different screen so we can look at some graphics from your website if I can figure out how to do this. And now if I pull up this is one of the things I was hoping that you'd be able to see. It's going to be super small, I'm sure, but it's just some organizational facts from the websites Pheasant Forever and Quail Forever. So again, you were talking about the acreage, 22 million acres improved. So when I'm looking at this distribution of expenditures, we've got 66% for the habitat. We've got 24% for this, 3% for this, 7% for this. How do you guys know where to split that money up? Is it strictly like we know based on historical funding that we're going to get about this much money, or we're counting on this much money for this year, and we're going to put it strictly based on percentages? We're going to put 65% towards here, 25% towards there. How does that thinking go?
Sure. So a couple different layers for that. So since we've been around 1982, 90 cents on the dollar has gone into what we would categorize as the habitat mission of the organization. So 90 cents out of a dollar has gone towards the organization's mission for 4 decades, which is tremendous efficiency. So that would include habitat restoration, prescribed burning, seed planting, pollinator planting. It also would apply to land acquisitions, easements, or education, introducing the next generation or underserved audiences to the outdoors. One of the cool mechanisms to get to your question of how do you know how to spend the dollar or where to spend the dollars, when our chapters raise money, so let's say Hutchinson, Minnesota and Western Minnesota, they raise $20,000 at their banquet. What makes us a little bit unique compared to all the other organizations. So if there's a critter that people hunt or fish, there's an organization,
Right.
National Wild Turkey Federation, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Delta Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, Trout Unlimited, Muskies Inc. What's real unique about us is that 20,000 raised in Hutchinson, Minnesota stays under the control of the local volunteers in Hutchinson, Minnesota to do habitat work in their own community. It makes sense. Like ducks migrate from Canada to, the Gulf. So Ducks Unlimited headquarters can decide where to best spend those dollars to improve duck populations through habitat in the nesting region, the prairie pothole or Prairie Canada. Whereas in Hutchinson, our birds, pheasants, have a lifespan of like a 2-mile radius. So they can do habitat work in their own community and actually make a difference. So it's those decisions on how to spend the dollars starts at the local level. So the chapter in Detroit going to have a hard time doing habitat work in inner city Detroit.
Right.
But although those folks say, you know what, we travel to the Dakotas, we travel to Iowa, we want to send our money to headquarters to do lobbying efforts, policy advocacy efforts in Washington, D.C. for federal conservation policy. So when we do travel to those western states to chase pheasants, or we go south to chase quail, that there's habitat, public access for the birds. So it's a little bit of a unique model of a choose your own adventure that allows those volunteers to do what makes the most sense in that chapter volunteer community where those dollars are raised. It makes us a really powerful entity at the local level.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the reasons I brought that up is, and Eric and I have had this conversation before too. You see this charity, that charity, this organization, you never really know where that money is going. You donate $40. Is that $40 going into somebody's pocket, or is $25 going to somebody else and only 15 goes to the actual thing that you're trying to support? And that was one of the things that I loved about Pheasants Forever is I think the stat was 91% of the money coming in is staying within the organization to do the mission work that the organization is there to do, which I think is incredible because it's hard to trust charitable organizations every now and then. And I think this is one or two organizations that there's no concern. Your money is going towards something that you want it to go towards. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, our goal is obviously to be as transparent as possible. And you can see you grab this fact sheet right off of the website. You can, pull up our financial statements right in the footer of the website. It's all there for anybody to take a look at. It's, when people are making a contribution to a nonprofit, you expect that the dollars are going to go towards the mission. And, 91 cents goes to the mission. I'm sure there are folks who are, well, where's the other 9% go? Well, the other 9% goes to salaries, paper, fundraising expense, direct mail, postage. There's to be able to generate 91% of funds for the mission. 9% is used to actually run the organization, pay for a building. And so it can't be 100%. 91% is incredibly efficient.
It's damn good.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Kudos. Hats off to you guys for doing that.
Go into another area with you real quick, unless you need to finish up something here with this literature.
No, the only thing that I was going to call out is that blew my mind was 1,725 land acquisitions totaling almost 220,000 acres since 82 is, that's a lot of land, man.
And those are all public today. So anybody, you can go, get your Onyx subscription out and you can look up the Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever layer.
Yep.
And you can go see those properties and it's open to all of you. It's your land. It's public land.
And it's something for us Minnesotans, I think we take it for granted a little bit because we're pretty lucky to have a lot of public land that we can hunt, where other states, Texas being one of them, good luck finding public land to hunt. It's hard, and not every state has that type of access to public land to hunt.
You're right. I mean, everybody thinks Texas, but like Kansas has, by percentage, the 49th state in terms of public land in the country. Kansas,
yeah.
So in Iowa, I think is 47.
Yeah.
Some of these states and those are states where we do a lot of work to create public access, whether that's land acquisitions or, not to get into the political or the government acronyms, there's a program called VPA HIP. I know it sounds like an STD.
I think it's the newest rapper on the Billboard Top 20, I think.
But ultimately, the federal government creates a payment program to incentivize states to match dollars and open up private land for walk-in access. So it's the walk-in programs that exist across the country, which we're really, really heavily involved with, because we know we can't buy enough land to make public access for everybody. But if we add additional payments to private landowners' bottom lines to open up their land for access to hunters, then it's again diversifying revenue streams, diversifying access streams, and that's what we try to accomplish.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, Eric. So, Eric, whatever you had.
I was just going to go over the pheasants a little bit and the quail, if I could go into a little bit more depth with the raising of pheasants and quail in the wild. Your pheasants, when do they usually have their eggs? How long are before they're born? Do they incubate them for 6 weeks, 9 weeks? What is the I know it's not 9 weeks or 6 weeks, but
9 months.
We can go 9 months. Yeah, I know. 9 months.
No,
I want to kind of hit on that a little bit of the raising of the wild birds.
Yeah. I'll put on my biologist hat on, knowing that I am a marketing professional, and I'll just give you the basics here. So start with pheasants. So they start initiating nests. Initiating means they kind of create a place to nest, and it's not like a robin's nest. They are ground nesting birds around tax day. So think about mid-April, and they will lay roughly 12 eggs in that nest, one a day. And then when they're clutch, meaning the number of eggs that they're going to lay and then stop. So let's just say on average it's 12. One a day, 12 days, then they stop, and then the hen sits on that nest for 23 days, almost day and night, 23 days. And those 12 eggs that they drop one a day, they do not, like, the first egg doesn't start the incubation process until the hen sits on that nest on day 12. I mean, Mother Nature's just freaking incredible when you start thinking about some of these things.
Right.
So 23 days, and then then hopefully they hatch. If a skunk comes along like on day 18 and raids that nest and eats them, as long as none of the eggs have hatched, the hen will re-nest. The downside is on the secondary nesting attempt, that average egg clutch of 12 will go down to, let's say, 7. If a raccoon comes, same thing happens. They will re-nest a third time, but then the clutch is going to be like 3 to 5 eggs. Every time a nesting attempt happens, the number of eggs go down. The hen doesn't have enough energy, and enough calcium to create a ton of eggs. A distinction there is, if that first clutch, 23 days, and they hatch, and then something comes in, gully washer, get a massive rainstorm and wipes out all those chicks because they've hatched. The hen will not re-nest. The nesting season is the minute a singular egg hatches, the pheasant goes into mom mode.
Okay.
And it changes. And it's important because when you have a really perfect spring nesting season and hens can be successful with those first nests, then you can have populations that hockey stick, right? Because you're bringing in 12 chicks into the population. And that's the years that you really get good fall hunting. If you have lots of cold, wet, maybe even a snowstorm late in the season, and you have second nests and third nests, then populations don't boost as quickly. So it's really important. The nesting season is, really, really important. Habitat is the key. Nesting season is number two. It's not about winter severity generally.
Right.
It's really about habitat and nesting season. A little bit different with quail. Quail, because we're talking about the southern U.S., they can start nesting a little bit earlier, April, and they can actually nest until August, whereas pheasants are pretty much done, June. So
Okay.
quail nesting can last a lot longer. What I talked about with nesting, laying the eggs, predation, everything is pretty applicable to quail. They won't re-nest if there's been a hatch. They will re-nest if the eggs get eaten. The number of eggs go down. The difference, and I call this the Mr. Mom advantage of bobwhite quail. The male in a bobwhite scenario will help incubate the nest. So
It's like penguins.
Yeah. So bobwhites a hen can actually pull off multiple nests because the male is helping.
Right.
So bobwhite quail, they have a really high R factor in biology terms where their population can really explode given the right conditions. So that's one of the beautiful things about these birds is given good habitat and good weather, populations can really jump very quickly. I call them nature's chicken nuggets. Everything eats these birds, so they have to have very high rebound.
So are they similar to the turkey? So if we have a major rain season, spring, you have a lot of them that are lost, the young, once they're born, correct? They drown.
Yeah,
because
turkeys,
they look up all the time into young. Yeah.
Turkeys, pheasants, quail, grouse, they're all gallinaceous birds. So what you know about grouse or turkeys is very applicable to pheasants and quail.
Yeah, I figured it would have been. I kind of knew that answer, but I was wanting the people to understand that. So if you have like here, if we have a very wet season, that it's raining a lot during the turkey nesting time when they're hatching, we usually don't see very many poults out there. You hardly ever see any young that spring. Because a lot of them drowned. And because the dumb birds like to look up when it's pouring down rain, they actually drowned the young. So that's the problem.
I mean, who doesn't like to look up in the rain?
Yeah.
I know I do. So how do you guys work with local government or even state government or even federal government agencies? I know you brought up lobbying a couple times. Are you there? Are you guys in conjunction with those lobbyists or reading what might be coming up or coming out to do consulting on what they're trying to pass, or is that kind of something different, or are you guys involved in that?
Yeah, again, one of those answers where multiple levels in multiple layers. We at the very top of it, we try to influence policy to have conservation language that we want in there. We look at if I dial back to the 80s and I think about Saturday morning cartoons.
Mhm.
You remember those, the rainforests are disappearing, and the most threatened ecosystem on the planet is a rainforest. Well, today, the most threatened ecosystem on the planet are our own grasslands in the United States. It's our native prairies, it's sagebrush, it's the savannas of the Southeast. They're disappearing at rapid pace from intensified agriculture, urban sprawl, um, oil and gas, solar, just all sorts of different factors. There's not one single culprit, but our grasslands are disappearing. So we advocate in Washington, D.C. for policy that conserves, restores grassland habitat, whether that's the Farm Bill, transportation bill, energy policy, and same thing at state capitals. We're trying to create funding to create wildlife management areas and
Right.
incentivize farmers to protect habitat with buffers. So our focus in the legislative arena is to shape policy and to generate funding streams that help pay for grassland conservation.
Okay, so Eric, I don't know if you have any other questions regarding the organizations.
No, not really. I've got enough information on the website. I brought up both of those websites, the Pheasant Forever and the Quail. I'm gonna try to at least make the one in Kentucky whenever I can find it here, because I looked for it and I couldn't find Kentucky. So
It's because nobody really truly cares about Kentucky.
That's true. But it's the quail side. We don't have the pheasants here, so
True.
Kentucky is interesting in that one of the better habitat opportunities in Kentucky is reclaimed mines.
Right.
There's opportunities to restore quail habitat in mines.
We have a lot of mine places, believe me.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up a term, Bob, and I want to get your reaction. Blue platers. Why do they all hate Minnesotans so much?
Well, not all. North Dakota and Iowa do not care for Minnesotans coming to their fine states to hunt. South Dakota, on the other hand, welcomes the influx of revenue from Minnesotans.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I get for every year somebody in North Dakota will not be happy that when I roll up to a public property and like, you bleep 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 blue platers hunting our birds. Like, okay. But it's completely different in South Dakota. They really recognize the dollars that are going into hotels and restaurants, and
those are small economies to build too. I mean, a lot of those towns are really small towns, and even just a month or so of people coming in and spending money at the cafe, that's a big deal.
But you think about some of those states and blue plated, so Minnesotans, we're number one non-resident licensed buyers for South Dakota, number one non-resident licensed buyers for North Dakota, number one non-resident licensed buyers in Iowa. So you can understand to an extent, if you're an Iowan and you just see a stream of Minnesota plates hunting your public properties.
True.
That can irritate you.
Oh, for sure. So on that same line of thinking, talking about private land versus public land, I mean, I know the difference. Obviously, I know the difference, but hunting pheasants, and when I hunted pheasants in North Dakota, we had a place in Mott, North Dakota, and it was great pheasant hunting. Problem was, it was mostly private land. It was a little more difficult to find the public land to hunt. Luckily, we had the in with most of the farmers that had the land. They let us hunt. I'm pretty sure, if I know you a little bit, you're more partial to hunting public land than private land. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah, and I like that as well. But it's really hard when you have an invite to some private land that is a golden spot to pass that up, right? Private land, do they have anything to do? I know we've talked a lot about you guys with public land. Is there any interaction with landowners that don't want to give up land, working with the organization? If I don't know if that question makes any sense or not, where I'm going with it.
Yeah, well, actually, most of our work, most of those 22 million acres that you see on the stat sheet, is habitat conservation work on private lands.
Okay.
That's where the bigger opportunity, because most of the lands in the country are, particularly in the states we're talking about, is privately owned.
Right.
So we work through a partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We have these farm bill biologists that work with private landowners to enroll those landowners in conservation programs. I mentioned CRP. It's kind of the biggest acronym in our world, the Conservation Reserve Program, where it pays private landowners to plant their less farmable, they're highly erodible soils, the parts of their farm that are right up to the stream or in a wetland. They pay that landowner to plant it to a habitat mix, and that habitat mix will benefit water quality, soil health, create habitat for pollinators or turkeys or ducks. But it's also, our purpose is trying to get that habitat to create pheasants and quail as well. So we do a ton of work for private landowners to get them paid by the state or federal government for habitat work. The public land piece of it, if we're buying land, it becomes public. But then we also work with state agencies to do habitat work on state properties that is, some of these states, they just don't have the manpower to do habitat improvements on their state-owned land. So we can come in there and do a prescribed burn, do a nesting planting, do a pollinator planting, do woody cover removal. One of the things that, you talked a lot about, how agriculture has changed habitat. Well, another thing that's changed grasslands habitat is just the tree encroachment. If grasslands are left to be, like eastern red cedars take over the Great Plains and they suck water out of them, not supposed to even be there, and they become biological deserts compared to what was there. And people think, well, why didn't that happen in the beginning? And so, well, we dial it back to the time of the bison, and the bison was eating the grass and keeping woodies, trees and woody cover down to a minimum, so it could be grass. And that's why prescribed fire is so important, or even ranching, having cattle on the landscape. We're not adversaries with agriculture. We just want to we have this motto: farm the best, conserve the rest. And that means having corn and beans and wheat in the best soil possible. But next to streams or hillsides, that should be planted to grass to create habitat for wildlife. Cattle should be on the landscape, but they need to be rotationally grazed. So to mimic the bison. So you do have habitat for bees, butterflies, and birds.
Mm-hmm. So where are we at right now with pheasant numbers? Let's talk Minnesota, because obviously Minnesotans love to go to all the other states to go pheasant hunting. And in my head, logically, there's a reason for that, and that's because the numbers are down in Minnesota. And now I've seen more pheasants, I think, in the last handful of years than I have many years before that. Do you have a sense for the state of let's pick on Minnesota. Where's the pheasant numbers for us at?
So I'd say the southern part of the state are doing very well. So Lyon County, Jackson County, Renville, but winter did put a hurting on, say, as you move up to Stearns, Pope, that like middle third of the state and north, winter did have a negative impact. If you talk about, like, let's blow this out a little bit broader and then come back to Minnesota. I mentioned CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program. That's the real crown jewel of pheasant habitat in the country. When that was at its high point, 06, 07, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Minnesota, not Iowa. That's because of some other things with agriculture, but Minnesota, Kansas, North Dakota, Nebraska, South Dakota had like 40 to 60-year highs in bird numbers. I mean, we had the good old days were just 06, 07. Like South Dakota was harvesting nearly 2 million wild birds a year.
Nice.
Minnesota was 600,000 wild birds a year. CRP, and at that time, CRP was about 36 million acres nationwide. Right now, it's in the neighborhood of 22 million acres. So pretty dramatic fall off in the number of acres. And as those acres fell off, bird numbers have fallen off dramatically. South Dakota's in 1.2 to 1.5 million harvest. Minnesota's in a 250 to 350,000 bird harvest. So we're up a little bit this year. I'm guessing the numbers are going to be up compared to where they were a year ago, but we're probably half of what we were in 07, which is
now, are these all wild birds we're talking? Is that correct?
Yeah, we're talking wild birds only. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Most these states that we're talking about are not releasing pen raised birds into the population, and that's a good thing, because you think about one of the things that really worries me. The states that really want to do the instant fix of releasing birds, and you think about CWD. Well, avian influenza, bird flu, can be spread from a bird raised in a pen, released into a wild population, and then shit hits the fan. Right. And it's not a far-fetched scenario to have something like that happen. We get so accustomed to easy fixes in this country, and the reality is habitat takes a little bit of time, takes some money. That's where it's at, though. And I keep saying monarch butterflies, honeybees, water quality, soil, because we got to think broader than just one specific critter we're trying to influence. Because when you try to do good things for habitat, it benefits all of us, and it benefits the entire ecosystem, creates places for all of us. Just think about our own mental health. Public access, getting out, stretching the legs is damn good for the heart and soul,
Well,
physical activity?
You can talk the same way with the wetlands, too. I mean, the wetlands, people just, I don't know. It's just like being destroyed all the time, the wetlands. And it's not being put back. And that's the same way with the habitat for the quail and the pheasant, too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, habitat is key. And, we can't, we have to take notice when these birds are crashing all around us. And, people say, well, there's no quail left anymore, and I haven't done a darn thing. Well, that's the point. Like the habitat, the habitat's aged out, or, grasslands have become trees. Deer and turkeys can adapt to trees, but, pheasants, quail, grassland birds, they can't.
Right. Now we're going to move to, I think, a lot of people's favorite topic. I'm going to pull up a picture of you and your bestie. That's you, and I don't want to butcher the name. Is it Esky?
Esky, yep. So my hometown is Escanaba, Michigan, and all the locals call Escanaba Esky.
Okay.
So this pup is named after my hometown, so she's Esky.
Gotcha.
I'm kind of a bird dog name snob. I spend a lot of time coming up with dog names, and I love a good story behind a dog name.
Oh yeah, you have to have that.
Yeah.
So how long ago was this? This was fairly recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, that wasn't too long ago. That was maybe 5 years ago. Travis Frank hosted the Flush on Outdoor Channel. Took that photo. That was at the end of a hunt we were filming for television.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I love that picture. And then I brought one more picture. I think I stole it from your Instagram because I thought this was an awesome picture because the puppers just look so happy, like so proud.
Yeah.
Is that Esky again?
That is Gitch. Gitchy.
Okay.
So this is my younger pup, Gitchy Gumi, named after the Ojibwe name for Lake Superior.
All right.
Yep.
Awesome. So, dogs.
Dogs.
Do you have to have a dog to go pheasant hunting?
No. But
I know that was a trick question.
Yeah. It's funny. You could definitely rough grouse hunt without a dog. Get one BB and a grouse, and it's not going to run off very often.
Right.
Pheasants, you really have to hit it hard for a pheasant to not run off. So, is it possible to pheasant hunt without a dog? Yes. Would I advise it? No. Honestly, you have to really be specific about hunting ditches, very linear cover, because a pheasant's first instinct is to run. Pheasants do not want to fly. They want to run around you. Or they'll just sit still. That's different than, say, a rough grouse or even quail to an extent, that will flush as you approach. Pheasants will just in tall grass, they'll just run around you. So it's possible to pheasant hunt without a dog, but it's very difficult.
The one, I don't even remember how many years ago this was, but when we went out to North Dakota, it was my father and I, we don't have a hunting dog. So we just went out there, and so we were taking pointers at the bar of how to go hunting, and neither one of us really experienced at pheasant hunting. So we took pointers, and these guys at the bar, they could have been just blowing smoke up our asses for all I know. I had no idea. But what we were told is you get into the field and you kind of walk in a zigzag line and stop every once in a while. And they said, if you stop, the pheasant's going to get confused because it's expecting you to keep moving. It's going to get confused and it's going to flush. And it worked a couple times, but not so much. So I don't know if there's any truth to that, if they get confused if you stop and do a zigzag. I don't know. I'm sure these jackasses were sitting in their truck somewhere with their binoculars going, look at those morons.
Certainly pheasants have flushed without even a dog being around it. I mean, it happens all the time. Right. But you're spending a lot of time out there wandering, hoping that a bird gets nervous.
Yes.
A dog. I mean, I call bird dogs the cocaine of conservation. And people hear that like, cocaine isn't an entry level drug. But I don't know. But bird dogs do hook people into bird hunting. I mean, that the magic of the relationship that exists between a bird hunter and their dog, especially if, my opinion, a pointer, you just think about this dog, their instinct is to stop short of flushing a bird until their human partner
right.
can get there. And then you shoot and they'll retrieve it back to you. I mean, I just get jacked on. I just love it. And so much joy comes from that relationship with the dogs. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And you think about folks that use raptors, and they'll use a pointer to point a bird. They don't have a shotgun, right? They release the falcon into the air. Falcon gets up to a peak. Then the human will go in there, flush the bird. The raptor, I think they call it stooping, right? They'll fold the wings and come down like 100 miles an hour and smack that bird out of the air. And can you imagine though, like a human, a canine, and a bird working together to create food?
Right.
So I just think it's cool as shit to
Oh, it's
have
awesome.
some of these components of a bird hunt.
Yeah.
When after we had wandered around those fields for a couple hours, there was a group, two guys that had, I think they had 2 pointers, and they were from Michigan, and they kind of saw us just wandering aimlessly, and they're like, come on with us, come on with us. And I think they kind of wanted to show off. And I almost stopped, like I almost forgot what we were doing because I'm watching these dogs work, and I'm like, how in the world do you train your dog that well? That is absolutely amazing. And to see that dog work was just incredible. And I wish somebody would come and train my stupid dog that it's just a house dog and I can't even get it to come when I yell at it. It's like, what am I doing wrong? But these dogs are amazing. They're awesome.
Yeah, a combination of terrific breeding, and then they do, every day I'm out running my dogs, and
Right.
then, training in a more formal setting once a week all year long.
Yeah.
It's
It sounds like I need to go get a falcon, Eric. I'm putting that on my Christmas list. If I'm getting a falcon.
the
I'm getting a falcon.
It won't catch fish for you.
Neither do I. So I guess we got two things in common. But at least the falcon's not going to miss. I'm going to take my shotgun and miss. And speaking of shotguns, now I need to ask, what's your favorite loadout? What is your favorite gun to carry for pheasant hunting? And is it different than what you would suggest for new people? Is it different than experienced people? Like, what do you suggest and what's your favorite?
Well, I've got 7 different shotguns, so I like shotguns. My favorite pheasant hunting shotgun, I have a Beretta 686, it's a 12 gauge over and under shotgun. Because I'm hunting over pointing dogs, I generally am taking closer shots than, a flushing dog. So I use skeet chokes. So very, very open chokes with Federal Prairie Storm steel. Federal Ammunition is another one of those companies that has our logo on their box of ammunition.
Yep. And we had there's a gentleman that has been, I don't know if he's still hanging out in our chat, but this was one of his. I did have this question written down, but this was one of his questions from earlier that he put in our chat. Was what's your loadout? And he actually works at Federal, so
cool.
Maybe that's why he was he was testing it. I don't know. Maybe.
So, and I ideally I like 5-shot. I like a little bit smaller shot, especially using a skeet choke, just getting a broader pattern. In terms of a new hunter, if you're gonna own one shotgun, to do everything, grouse, quail, pheasants, it's kind of hard to steer somebody away from a 20 gauge. 20 gauge is very versatile. It's a little bit lighter. What you got to get used to with any shotgun is having it snug against your shoulder and in your cheek, so the kick doesn't bother you.
Right.
If you break a few clays at the sporting clay range and get comfortable with it, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference what gauge. True. It's comfort level, and I kind of like a Prince of Wales stock, which is a little bit really comfortable grip for me. It's a little bit more ergonomic, I guess, than a pistol grip, but not as English stock is a straight.
Yep.
And that's a little uncomfortable for me. So Prince of Wales is just kind of a blend between the two, and I like. I have a Frankie that. I have 2 Frankies that have that Prince of Wales grip, and I really like that one. It's comfortable to carry all day long.
I would send Eric out with the Remington 870, just to get that those muscles going. About 13-pound gun that you're trying to lift and carry through the fields. I think that's what we should do. That's your exercise, Eric. Yeah. It'll help.
That wouldn't bother me a bit.
You don't think so?
No.
The number one owned shotgun in the country was a Remington 870. That's what,
of course. And I got one. It's in the gun cabinet.
Yeah, that's what most of us learned how to wing shoot from. And you bring up exercise. That's probably something that people maybe take for granted or don't recognize it, bird hunting is an ass kicker. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
you really, you got to stay in shape all year long to be able to go out and, you think, well, you're just walking through the prairie.
Right.
When you're going through cattails and that grass and it's pulling it and it's up and down, I was out hunting today and 22 degrees and you got layers on, and I walked 28,000 steps today, and that's not sidewalks.
No.
That's hard work, and I love it. It's exhilarating and keeps you active, but it's a lot of work.
I tried to track a deer this fall for about 40 yards and I thought I was going to die through the tall grass. This body is not made from a lot of exercise right now. I got to get back into that. Can you talk about your podcast? I guess I must have missed that you guys had this podcast. Now I'm going off of memory. Is it On the Wing?
Yeah, On the Wing is the name of the podcast. And, it's probably, I want to say 4 years in now. And some folks on my team had been talking to me about a podcast for a couple of years. I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to start a podcast. I get up at 4 a.m. every Saturday morning. People can just listen to KFAN if they want to get some outdoors conversation. But it finally kind of like hit me that, there's a whole audience outside of the Twin Cities or the fan radio network. And so, yeah, we've been doing a podcast called On the Wing. You can find it on wherever you download podcasts.
Yeah, you've figured that all out. I saw it on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud. So far, I've only figured out how to get to SoundCloud. From SoundCloud, I can't figure it out on how to get to the rest of the places. I'm still working on that.
But we try to cover a lot of topics from bird hunting to dogs to wild game cooking, habitat conservation, research being done. So if it's anywhere tangentially related to upland birds, we try to cover that on the podcast, and it's a lot of fun to do. Keeps me on my toes and relevant, and the newest things that are happening, and it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we've been enjoying ourselves on this podcast. I guess that's what we're getting a chance to talk to people like you. And I don't know squat, so I got to bring in people like you to learn. That's been one of the cool things for me of starting this show is I've learned a lot, whether it's about coyotes, pheasants, whatever it might be. I've learned a ton. I haven't hunted pheasants a lot, mostly because I don't have anybody that hunts pheasants around me. We didn't grow up hunting pheasants. I don't have the dog to do it. So my exposure has been pretty limited, but it's outdoors, and I love outdoors. I love hunting. I love the conservation idea. I just love it all. Right. So it's been fun for us as well.
Yeah. Right. It's also, probably 20 years ago, one of my interns came to me and he's like, we really need to start a Facebook page for Pheasants Forever. And I was like, really? And today it's one of the best channels we have for reaching folks. And it's an important reminder that, when your mission is, educating and pulling in audiences, you have to go to where they are. And whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, podcasts, to get the message out, you have to be nimble. And hopefully our organization's been doing that through the channels we work and the relationships and collaborations. Shout out to KFAN, giving me the opportunity to co-host with the captain Billy for, I think,
Tackle Terry.
I think Billy's been on that show for 30 years and I've been his sidekick for 13 now. And the power of that station across Minnesota and the Dakotas is unparalleled. I can roll into a hotel in, Ely, Minnesota, and, people know me from KFAN because you think about the geographic listening area of the Vikings radio network, it's like the Dakotan, North Dakota, South Dakota, pheasant country. They listen to the Vikings games, which
that's right.
I apologize for if you had to listen to the game this evening, because that was.
I got a text from somebody before the show. It said that was awful, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I've been focused on getting ready, so I have no idea. So I already know the outcome. I don't even have to look, and it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't live and die by the football scores anymore. It used to be, once I left fantasy football, I was like, I don't care anymore. I really don't. Awesome. Well, just a friendly reminder, everybody check out On the Wing podcast. You can find it anywhere. You can also listen back to Fan Outdoors, even if you're not in Minnesota or North Dakota or South Dakota or Wisconsin or Iowa. iHeartRadio, you can go to KFAN.com. You can find it easily. It's very easily accessible. Fan Outdoors. Pull it up on iHeartRadio. Listen to the past broadcasts. It's great. It's what I usually do when I'm driving. Because I don't always get up that early on Saturdays. Saturdays are usually my day to not get up that early. If I'm on the road trying to go hunting or fishing, and I usually catch you guys on the radio. And if not, I go back and listen. So everybody check that out. And then again, I think Sarah dropped the commands for the Pheasants Forever, ! Pheasants, ! Pheasants Bob. Pheasant Bob is what I put.
Bob. Yep.
Pheasant Bob. And that's Bob's Instagram, which is freaking awesome. So if you don't follow Bob on Instagram, please be sure to follow Bob on Instagram and follow his adventures. And it's been great. Eric, anything that you have in closing?
No.
If not, I've got one other thing.
Bob, I'd love to have you back again sometime. I think it'd be great.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun, guys.
Maybe Bob can tackle Terry or the captain into joining us and talking fishing or something else.
Oh yes,
that would be a hoot. Captain has the most Minnesota accent ever on the radio. I'm pretty sure of it.
What kind of boat would we go fishing on, Texas?
Sea Arc.
There you go.
A 26-foot Pro Cat 240. That's what I think. Well, I'm throwing words out there.
You got the wrong boat.
Okay, well,
26-footer.
I haven't measured all the models yet. Okay, give me a break. But that is a reminder. We are sponsored by Texas Select Seasoning. We are sponsored by Carolina Bass Co. Go to their websites. Use code CASTANCAMO to get 15% off. And thank you again, Steve Henderson, Alex Nagy, and the new team on our side, Sea Arc Boats. Can't be happier. Yes. Can't be more excited.
Very excited. Great.
All right. And we're going to let you guys go here in just a second. I got to see, the ending is always a little bit more tricky because we got this new fancy outro video and it's really cool.
Oh, yeah. Yes. We got fantastic stuff here.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. All right. Talk to everybody next Sunday night. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for being here.